Now, can I ask you a question which baffles a lot of us? A lot of you people, from Salim to yourself, allied yourself, gave of your time, of your resources to Raila Odinga for nothing.
Yes.
And
For
at what
an
point,
ideal.
For an ideal. And what we don't understand is you're obviously people who have principles and who have gifts in helping people get elected, whether it's through writing policies and strategies and whatever else. At what point did you guys get to this point of the critical mass where you said, actually, this is an Augean stables of mess, we have to get out? What was the point for you where you said, this is enough?
Well, I think that after the constitutional review process, when Raila abandoned the parliamentary three-tier devolution structure, I decided that Raila Odinga had gone too far. He was irredeemable. I thought all these other things he could come back. But the moment he told me that all he needed was the imperial presidency, he needed undiluted power of the presidency. And yet publicly he was telling people he needed power to be dispersed. And all along he said he stood for a democratic country governed by the rule of law and the constitution, and where the citizens held their leaders to account. I realized the man was gone. He was too greedy for power, and he was too greedy for money. And the moment I realized that his Ahakia is being cited severally, including through court cases, judgments of corrupt deals, and he's still keeping this man as his permanent secretary. Karoli's story is as long as the River Nile, and that is his chief of staff. I realized, no, he cannot be an agent of change. And I discussed this with Salim. At one point when Salim wanted to leave, and I had not reached this point, I went to Raila to plead his case. And Salim had then told me, no, I'm leaving, please, I'm leaving, I'm tired. And when I told Raila, Salim has decided to leave, he laughed it off. He said, Salim has been saying that for the last 1 year. He will not leave. So Raila believes that he's God, he's a demigod, that you cannot leave him. So also I saw that when he called me for a meeting and wanted me to go back to his office and wanted me to go and meet him at the office. And I told him, no, we can only meet in a neutral place. And he chose Serena. I saw when I said no, his body language. He couldn't believe it.
No one had ever said no to him before.
Because nobody has ever said no. And he believed he had reduced me to my knees because he had illegally withheld my pay. And by the way, he's still holding my pay. He illegally withheld and locked up my personal items. And he's still doing so. He did that to reduce me to my knees. He knew I had come back to Kenya from Canada, where I had practiced law for a while. And he knew I had not established myself back in Kenya. And he knew how corrupt Kenya was and how fighting for him had alienated me with some people that could probably give me cases and things like that. So he thought it was just a matter of time before Miguna crawls back. But I told him to his face, Miguna never crawls back.
That's very apparent. Now, one question I've been meaning to ask you, which is, if I could use the term, many of what we colloquially call the bearded sisters, people who you were involved in from campus right through to some of the radicalized politics of the day. You were unashamed Marxist at the time, and some of those other people, talking about, well, I don't need to explain who they are, but some of those people you were involved with, what would you have to say to them? Because they obviously came in with very high principles, and there were people who, at one stage, even though I might not politically agree with their ideology, were people who had principles and had a view of a reformed Kenya. And now most of them are mired in muck. What would you say to them?
To tell you the truth, most of them, I think, never believed in those principles. They, like Raila, pretended to be reformists, pretended to be socialist, pretended to be social democrats, but those are just words. They use those words to delude people into thinking that they were fighting for them. They were manipulating the people. These are the people. Remember, in 2007, 2008, Raila Odinga sent Maina Njenga, the former Mungiki leader, the 48 books or 48 rules of power. It means he believes in the 48 rules of power. Such a silly book.
One of which is to destroy your opposition.
Yes, yes. So that's what he believes in. Those are his principles. That is not Marxist-Leninist. That's not a progressive thinker.
Yeah.
So we believed, unfortunately, that these people were progressive. Consistently, now from up close, working with them, I discovered that no, that was just a ruse. Many of them have been involved in all kinds of corrupt deals.
And would you be able to mention some of those?
Well, I think they're in my book.
All right,
Yes.
we'll leave that. We'll see that. Ushuka, I know you've got a few questions there.
Well, yeah. Before we get into all the actually, they're more like comments now. They're more like comments now. Actually, at this stage, from Twitter. But I wanted to give you an opportunity. You had said that you wanted to explain further, more reasons why you wrote this book.
Yes. It is important for people to know that, and I mentioned this in the book, that before I came back, during the Boma's constitutional review process, one of my best friends, a role model, my mentor, Professor Crispin Odhiambo, was brutally murdered in Kenya. And his killers have never been apprehended, convicted, and sentenced. And this is a tragedy, I think, because he was one of the most brilliant thinkers in this country, one of the people who brought up and promoted devolution as a concept in this country during Bomas. And he was also Raila's advisor and close friend. And I had spoken with all kinds of people, Raila Odinga, Nyang' Nyong'o, and other ministers, asking them, pleading with them to help me and others unravel who killed Odhiambo. And they never did anything up to this moment. There are other people who have been assassinated. As a matter of fact, as we are speaking, Mombasa is burning because of extrajudicial killing of Sheikh Rogo. This kind of killings, the killing of Oulu and Kangara and the rest, this culture of blood, the culture of cutting your opponents down because you disagree with them, is not a culture that we should encourage. And I had thought that Raila Odinga had reached a point where he wanted to deal with this culture. Now he's the Prime Minister. He's at the highest level of any government. When he does nothing and talks like a pedestrian on the street, just like any other youth, wailing, saying police should do this and that, then you realize this man is not ready to be the president of Kenya.
Now, one of the questions here, which is a fantastic question, I think, somebody's asked, who will you vote for come 2013?
That one right now, I'm holding my cards close to my chest because first of all, we don't know who will be on the ballot. So up to this moment, some people will drop out. We wait to see who are the progressive candidates. I analyze them in my book and I say they have to be progressive, they have to be consistent, they have to be focused on the issues that affect the majority of the people of Kenya, starting with unemployment of over 70% of our youth. That situation has to be addressed. Looking at nepotism and tribalism and corruption. Those to me are the big ticket issues that will lead me to decide who to vote for and who not to vote for. By no means should Kenyans vote for anyone who has been involved in these corruptions or corrupt deals or scams. I would urge Kenyans to vet these people very, very thoroughly, starting with who they have hired since they have held these positions of power, whether in the ministries, whether in their private capacities, or whether in their political entourage. We have to vet each one of them. There is a natural strategic reserve which supplies maize to the market, supplies to mailers and other people that sell maize to consumers. And this was supposed to be subsidized by the government so that the people do not have to pay very high prices because they could not afford it. But instead of the government bringing the maize at a subsidized price for the normal citizens so that it goes to the National Reserve and then released to the market, dealers, briefcase dealers, mainly lodged in the Ministry of Agriculture, the Prime Minister's office, and many other departments within government, brought maize, sometimes even bad maize in bulk from South Africa and from other places, and had this maize admitted into the market and procedurally. So what would happen is that they would have letters allocated. Sometimes maize was not even brought, but letters were issued, fake letters were issued to dealers, fake dealers, that would go, say, for example, with 100,000 bags allocated on a piece of paper. You go to a dealer or a mailer in industrial area, and you tell the dealer or mailer that you have 100,000 bags of maize,
Yeah.
and you tell you can sell this for, let's say, 2,000 shillings a bag. This person would then pay you the 2,000 per bag. You get the money, and the person goes, instead of you then supplying the maize, they go to the National Reserve, which is not your maize.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to have brought the maize
Yeah.
from
Added value.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they go directly to the National Reserve, and they are given maize. And so you get your money, and you have done nothing.
Right.
You have not brought the maize. You have not even taken it from the National Reserve to the mailer, and here you are going home with millions of money.
You basically
That
been
is
given
how-
money for nothing.
For nothing.
Yeah.
That is how Karoli and Raila's relatives, including his own children, made huge amounts of money doing nothing.
And-
Now, there is a specific case in the book
Yeah.
of maize that was brought from through South Africa, through Mozambique. The maize was contaminated. Raila got into an argument with the Minister of Health and Sanitation, Beth Mugo, about the inspection and why the maize was released into the market. Raila intervening by asking a private company, not a government institution, to inspect the maize and giving it a green light to be supplied to the country, to the citizens, even though it was contaminated. So I deal in depth about the allegations surrounding this scandal and how the office or people close to Raila were involved.
Yeah.
I got this information from well-wishers who said, look, we are willing to support Raila, but he has to come clean on this thing, because this thing about maize is affecting mostly our supporters, ODM supporters,
Yeah.
who are poor and who are relying on the maize product to be able to live. So they said, look, if Raila is going to make a difference to our lives, we'll support him. But bring this to his attention. I called Raila, I asked for a meeting, I went to Orengo and Nyong'o. We had a private meeting at the Nairobi Safari Club, a private meeting after work, after 6 o'clock. Raila came to the meeting, Anyang' Nyong'o and Orengo, and the reason why I roped them in was because Anyang' Nyong'o is the Secretary General of the party. Orengo was very close and still close to Raila, and Raila listens to him. So I said we needed to have a small group that could persuade him to do something about this scandal that was threatening to cripple his ascendancy to the presidency. I was working for his best interest. He came to the meeting, and shortly afterwards, Karoli walks in. He invited Karoli, the same person we were supposed to discuss.
Yeah.
Then I realized Raila is not ready.
But to your credit, you actually still carried on in front of Karoli, if
Yes.
I remember rightly in the book. You said
And
to
raised
the
the
Prime
issues.
Minister,
Yes.
Karoli apparently has been involved
Yes.
in all this
Yes,
corruption,
I did.
and you pushed on the point, and the Prime Minister at that point basically poo-pooed you.
And he told me, don't call it a scandal. Essentially, they were telling me, see no evil, hear no evil. I challenge the people who are saying, why did you stay there for so long? Well, if I didn't stay, how would you know all these things? If I didn't work with Raila, how credible would be my story? The only reason my story is credible is because I was a confidant. They trusted me. I saw and heard everything. And so if I hear a conspiracy of somebody going to be killed, all right, and then I take off without hearing the entire conspiracy, would I help the police apprehend the criminals? No. I would only be able to do that when I am able to have this trust vested on me and I can report it so that the criminals can be apprehended. I did that. I had the options of keeping quiet. I had the option of eating with them. I had the option of resigning too quickly. If you remember, even Githongo did not resign too quickly.
Yep.
He waited until he had all the tapes.
Yep.
But I was not going to tape anyone. I mean, everybody uses his own style. I don't tape people without their consent. So I never taped anyone. And I'm not saying Githongo should not have taped. I'm just saying that's not my style. I took notes. And I have my notes.
Now, I mean, May scandal, I use that as an example because you deal with many other scandals in a similar manner in
Yes.
terms of really giving us a fly on the wall view of what actually happened at the higher levels of ODM, including the Prime Minister, whether it was the May scandal, whether it was the post-election violence, many other things.
Whether it is KKV.
KKV. You go through all of these things here. I mean, at one point, if, como pensa Mungu, we end up with a stage where we actually act on these scandals and the KACC decides something, would you be prepared to go as a witness?
Of course. Of course, any day, any time. Why aren't they instituting even a judicial inquiry? These are the kinds of things that call on Kenyans to have judicial inquiries.
Yep.
Some of these things can only be dealt with in those circumstances. I mean, a good police force would by now have all the evidence. And by the way, I think they have all the evidence. They're just not charging anyone.
And do you think, I mean, one
Because
of
let me tell you,
carry on, yes.
how would any civil servant who is earning less than 500,000 shillings a month buy vehicles worth 20 million in 1 year?
Yeah.
That alone is enough to send somebody to jail. You don't need any other evidence in law.
Now, one of the things which, from the layman's perspective, there seems to be a conspiracy of silence between both parties, PNU and ODM, in terms of this very issue as to why things are not being pursued.
Because both sides are corrupt.
Both sides are corrupt.
Yes.
Each has their own ministries, which they're busy pillaging and raping.
Right.
And the accepted norm is, well, you don't report on us, we won't report on you.
It goes deeper than that. You see, for example, Raila Odinga or his cohorts would not be able to execute some of these scandals if they did not get collaboration or they did not work together with people on the PNU side. Say, for example, Raila Odinga is huge in energy, oil and other related products. So who is the Minister of Energy? Kiraitu Murungi.
Yeah. In
Right?
fact, we had him in
so,
here yesterday.
and other people. Now, how about deals of KKV? Government produced about 10 billion Kenya shillings through Treasury. So clearly, and I know these people, Karoli was dealing with people in Treasury. Karoli had friends in Uhuru Kenyatta's office. This is his backup. This is how nothing has happened to him. And there are so many other people, and these people will come and confess to you. This thing about the vehicle carrying 54 million, he told me himself that he's carrying 54 million, and I could see the plastic bag. Many people have come to tell me, we have seen the same thing. Karoli has shown us money in his trunk.
Now, one of the areas which you skirted upon, which I would love you to give more information on, is we've realised, obviously, that there's reprobates around the Prime Minister, there's reprobates in PNU indeed, but there's also a thread which happens to be, and you mentioned them briefly, the Asian businessmen in between,
Yes.
who do business with anybody in
Yes.
terms of ripping off this country.
Not just Asian, even black. For
No, but I know
example,
you. Yeah, sorry.
The architect of the Anglo-Lycée has a free, he has even an express card. When he comes to the Prime Minister's office, he does not wait even in the VIP waiting room. He goes directly into the Prime Minister's office.
And who is that?
Jimmy Wanjiki. Yeah, he goes directly.
He goes
I've
straight-
seen him many times.
Yeah.
I want to take this in a sort of different direction because I'm looking at the reactions that we're getting and to see that now it's almost 50-50 of people pro, people people who believe, people who don't. But you also mentioned John Githongo and whistleblowers, and this to me brings up a very interesting question. We are so used to politicians who are inherently corrupt that when someone like you writes a book, it's very difficult to believe that it could be out of just honesty. So like we were saying during the break, you went on this tour, you were attacked by different people, the media seems to think this is very humorous. How can we change this national public dialogue we have about politics?
I think the media has to remain focused and be honest and accurate and balanced and fair. If the media did all this, then the public will get reliable information on which to form an opinion. And once that happens, you will find that the movement would be progressive. The country will tend to stay focused on the issues, and they will call their politicians to account. But the moment you muddy the waters, the moment you add propaganda and lies and you mix it up with the truth, the end product is not reliable. And that's what the media is doing right now. They take things which are completely made up, and then they mix it with a bit of the truth, so that the end product is not reliable. And they do this deliberately to confuse the people, so that at the end of the day, the leaders we get are leaders who can keep them on pay, who can be bribing them. Because if they had somebody like me, they feel that they would lose out because they will not be bribed. Unfortunately, I will not do it.
Now, we're going to have to wrap up, I'm afraid, because we've really have overrun. I want to ask you 3 questions, and I'd like you to answer them very succinctly and briefly if you can. 1, do you think the Prime Minister is fit for office to head up this country?
Completely unfit.
Right.
Irredeemably unfit.
All right, that's pretty clear and unambiguous. Number 2, do you ever see a day when the likes of you, John Gathongo, other people who've held themselves out as paragons of virtues, rightly or wrongly, will ever run this country?
I think that day is coming very soon. Remember, Raila Odinga was once in detention. Raila Odinga was once hiding under a chair, under a table in Thika Stadium. And his shoes was also taken, just like mine, by mobs. But he's the Prime Minister of the country. So there was a time Kibaki was tear-gassed in this city, and he's the President of this country.
And the final question, which I know everyone would like to ask you, having seen the reaction to your book and the way you've been received and treated, was it worth it? Would you do it again?
I'm doing it right now.
Yep.
I'm in Thika on Sunday at 10 o'clock.
Great. Well, we're going to crack on. It's been a real pleasure having Miguna here. Thank you very much. And as we've said before, you either love him or you hate him. And we wish you well and all Godspeed in what you're doing. Come back here anytime to talk to us about it. People are a lot more enlightened now, whether they like you or not, than they were 2 hours ago. So thank you very much.
Very illuminating.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and do come back.
I hope it was good. Yeah.